Hey everyone, I'm Chelsea, and welcome to Exclusive Interviews, where stories become the blueprint for your success. We believe that behind every accomplished individual lies a long journey of triumphs, challenges, and lessons. But we do this all for you. Stories to inspire you to push further, dream bigger, and achieve more. And now, onto the interview. Enjoy. Candice, so nice meeting you. This is the first time that we are sitting down together. It's been amazing getting to know you behind the camera, and I can't wait to get to know you in this space as well. Like I mentioned before, please sit back and relax. We're about to just have a very, very delightful conversation, not just really around you, but everything else that you believe in and that you are trying to do with your platform, which I find so interesting. I know you wear a lot of hats, and we'll dive into that further, but welcome to the exclusive interviews.
Thank you.
How are you doing, first of all?
I am good. I am, I think, in a space of relaxation after what feels like a really long year for me.
Yes.
And so I'm in a good space,
Okay.
just taking it all in. Resting, recouping, spending time with family and friends. And I'm really honored to be joining you and having this conversation with you today.
I think for us, we are more honored for you to come and sit with us. Like you mentioned, 2024 has been such a heavy and hectic year for a lot of us, especially me. So I feel that very personally. But just for you to end off your year sitting down with us, I know you've put aside work and all of that comes with your professional life, but just making time for us, we are more than grateful.
Yeah, the honor is mine.
No problem. I wrote down a few notes here for myself. As I mentioned, you do wear quite a few hats. One of them is a connection-focused therapist. You're a qualified social work practitioner, author, mental health practitioner, but overall boss babe, actually.
Oh, wow.
And today you are our guest, so we're going to dive deep into exactly who Candice is. And that's my very first question for you. Who is Candice? Tell me more about you. Where you're from, a bit of your childhood. Let's take a deep dive.
Okay, you're starting deep there.
Yes, dive right deep.
I think I am, at my core, a person who gains a sense of self through the relationships in a life. So if I were to probably best simplify who I am as Candice, I would say to you that I'm Candice, the mother to a very busy 5-year-old boy, Alexander. I am Candice, a daughter. I am part of a blended family, and we'll get into that in a bit, but I am the eldest of 9 siblings.
Shoo.
And yes, I am also a recent author, self-published author.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. One of the
Yes.
biggest highlights for me this year. I am a lecturer. I teach social work and psychology students, probably for the past decade now, which has been quite an honor in itself. I love the learning exchange that happens within a classroom space. I also work at a high school, all-girls school, as a counselor on a part-time basis, and then I do most of my work, or my predominant theme of my work is really within the mental health space around the reparenting of your younger self, which I think appeals to so many of us. So I work predominantly with teenagers and adults. I think at the center of all of that, if I were to just in one sentence attempt to simplify it, I'd say to you that I just deeply value relationship and people understanding the importance of building healthy and solid relationship within their lives. And I think we could probably flip that and say it's the reason why, as humans, when we aren't good, or when relationships in our lives aren't doing well, we don't feel
we
okay,
suffer.
we aren't okay. And so I believe we are sort of hard box wired to find connection and find safety through our relationships. I think we've been wired for connection and relationship with people. And I think beyond it being, or speaking to the work that I do, it's really just a philosophy that I apply within my own life to build and maintain healthy relationships within my life. within all of those many roles that I fulfill and that I take up. Yes.
And do you think that's come from the fact that you are the eldest of 9 siblings?
I mean, it definitely contributes toward that, and I'm so blessed to get to say that even within a blended family space, I think as a family we operate in a very healthy way.
Okay.
We have good relationships, we maintain those relationships, and when things aren't okay, it's always a matter of not wanting to win, an argument or disagreement, because these conflicts arise. We are very many personalities and temperaments as a family. But ultimately, that when something has gone wrong, whatever it may be, that the aim is always to build or to win the relationship instead of winning argument or winning whatever that challenge is or discomfort is. And I think with that as your sort of center focus, that relationship is what is most important here. We managed to overcome.
Okay, interesting. I think a lot of us forget that we're not arguing with the person, we're actually arguing about something, not someone.
Yes.
So I think that's quite healthy. When we take a peek into who you are on your social media platforms, very bold, very beautiful. You speak a lot on healing and growth specifically, and I know you hold that quite dear to your heart. So tell me exactly, where did this passion around those 2 topics begin for you, and exactly why?
Yes, I think fundamentally for me as a social work practitioner, and I started my career out as most social workers do, either within a government space or any NGO space. It's really needing to understand that the point at which people are entering in to meet with you is really them identifying something within themselves or their own lives, within the ecosystem that is not okay. And that's the entry point, right? That's fundamentally, if you were to even ask a teenager, an adult, like, what do you understand by a social worker and the work that they do? They probably much describe the same thing to you.
Yes.
And I think it's really been for me about understanding the paradox around how our hurt needs to happen in order for that healing to occur. So I refer to it as the hurt that heals. And so it's me understanding, I suppose, that I've probably had to go through some things in order to see the growth or the healing or the transformation taking place within my life. And I think that's also probably the same, or can be extended into the spaces with individuals that I work with within that therapeutic space. Yeah.
Are there any specific events that you'd maybe take us through that have played a role in exactly what you've just mentioned? I know for a lot of people listening to this or watching this video back, they resonate a lot with what you said, because you can't really look forward without appreciating what's happened behind. And that's not in hindsight, that's appreciating just exactly how strong you are and noticing the growth. So are there maybe specific events that you think people might relate to?
Yes, I think all of us. I think at our core we are a human race that identifies each of us with a certain narrative or story that we carry. In my book, I make the analogy of the bags, and I refer to the fact that each of us, we carry a bag, and each of us, we pack differently in that bag. Some of us, and it's really the elite few, are very light travelers, and if you are, then that's amazing.
Oh, you're blessed.
But I think for most of us, it's the fact that we have probably hoarded every lived experience and memory and packed it into that bag. And so we journey through life heavy, and we journey through life carrying heavy. And I think the call on us as a people is to very gently and with a lot of compassion seat ourselves on the ground, open up the bag, and begin to unpack the stories, the lived experiences, the narratives that no longer serves the person that you are, the person that you desire to be. Because each of us, I believe, we have the autonomy to change whatever the past was, right?
Definitely.
And I don't mean change in terms of I get to go back and undo it, because we certainly can't. But in identifying that there are past wounds, and as we sit and we unpack that bag, we can change. We can change the plot. There's a plot twist that we get to have. I'm a firm believer of that we get to reinvent, reintroduce, reestablish ourselves at any point in time. I remember teaching a module to my psychology students on adult development. And at the start, when I was preparing for this module, before it started, I remember opening up the textbook and I was reading just the introduction to the textbook. And one of the most profound things that the research revealed was, for the longest time, we've believed that our childhood lived experiences carries the weight in our lives, in the sense of it really determines where you and I are going to end up and how we are going to end up and what we are going to project and put out into the world. But research now has actually revealed that because our adult life or our adult lifespan is almost 3 times that of our childhood, if we are lucky to live that long, we get to re-establish, reintroduce ourselves at whichever point we find it is necessary for us to do so. I do think it's a call that's on you and I, and not everybody answers, to the call. There's theories out there that refers to it as a midlife crisis, where many of us, we journey through life and we do everything that this metaphorical map requires of us as humans. We do everything society has constructed and made us believe is necessary for us to reach the apex of adulthood. And then a lot of people get there and they're like, where's the treasure? Like, where's the X mark treasure? Like, I haven't found it, you know? And we've converted that into saying it's that midlife crisis. But I think what's really happening there is that when everything in the outside world loses its meaning, that is usually when you and I are being summoned inward. And that's just me, just to reference back to what I said earlier around when those past wounds come up and those past experiences sort of permeate into our adulthood and into our adult lives. There's a reason why that happens. There's a reason why they say the body keeps the score. Because we can try to dissociate, we can try to ignore that the bag is heavy, but eventually it weighs you down and it may feel like everything begins to lose meaning for you and I. And that's usually when we are being summoned inward, when that inner call happens, and that's the call that I was referring to.
100%. I think conversations like this are so necessary, no matter which level or stage of life you're at, whether you're a teenager listening to this, whether you are a young adult, whether you are maybe deep in your 30s or 40s trying to figure life out again, and referencing back to that new start, that reinvention that can take place at any time. Conversations like this is so maybe taboo for some, because you don't know where people have grown up in the spaces they find themselves in. But these conversations are so important for our growth. Mental health overall is such a growing concern, no matter which community you come from, the color of your skin or your age. And I guess for me, I wanted to know what changes you have observed in how people address it today compared to maybe 5, 6, 10, 15 years ago. And what has your mental health journey looked like?
Sure. Twofold question there. So I think there's been significant strides around mental health within a global, sense or aspect. I have seen the impact of social media, public advocacy, and the role that that's played. I think people have, at best, tried to normalize it. And I think it's come through that vocalizing of whatever is happening within your life or within your space. That being said, though, I think there's still also a lot of stigma attached to it. There's a lot of work that also needs to be done in respect of making mental health care more accessible and more equitable for all, because really it shows up differently for different people. And there's still a lot of those stigmas attached to family spaces, even within a culture aspect, and I often bring this up within my classroom space with my students. And so how do we detach from those stigmas? How do we best identify when actually I may need professional help, I may need to see someone professionally, I may need to go and see someone just to establish and help assess what is actually going on with me. And so, yes, I see significant strides, but at the same time, I think I must acknowledge that there's still a lot of work to be done. Yes, and then there's also the flip side to social media, and a lot of the ways in which individuals advocate. I am a firm believer of our stories also being very sacred, and we need to hold to that. And so often people share or they overshare, and they deem that social media space as safe, but it's not necessarily
Sometimes it can be
safe.
really detrimental.
to your mental health.
Yes,
The
yes.
very thing that you may be, advocating for or aiming to protect. It could completely not turn out to have those effects or work in that way. And then my own mental health, I think, because I'm so relationally centered or centered on relationship, I think to me the important thing there is really just to maintain having safe people in my life and finding myself in safe spaces and places, and that means that I'm very intentional in respect of who I allow into my space. Firstly, I'm intentional around who I sit around a table with.
Yes, yes.
A lot of the times we don't pay enough attention to those things, and then it ends up impacting us in such a big way because we are relational beings.
Yes.
We are relational beings, and so I believe we are wired to seek out people and things and places that make us feel most safe. That is what we desire ultimately, and so I think, to me, I've best maintained that as far as I've been able to maintain finding what makes me feel most safe.
Has that always been easy for you to maybe speak about? Because I know for somebody in my age, I grew up in a household with very conservative and traditional parents, right?
Same.
Where you can't even mention mental health. I think we spoke about feelings maybe 16 and maybe when I reached 16 and then over that. And looking at maybe the life I want for myself, the way that I communicate with my friends and other relationships around me, I can definitely see that I'm much different. And I understand that that's a generational change, and that in itself is a topic. But I know that the decisions I will make around my mental health and those people around me will be much different compared to the generation that that we are following. So how exactly are you implementing that with your little boy?
Yes, I think firstly with regards to our parents, I always assert that I guess there's a lot of grace that we often need to extend in understanding the way in which they parented us, and how vastly different that is perhaps today in how we show up as parents to our kids, or how I show up as a mom to my son. And also just the understanding that for the most part they were doing the best with what they knew, right?
True.
And so now that you and I know more, we have access to more, there's more knowledge, there's more conversations happening about gentle parenting and how to, parenting hacks.
Yes.
And we lean into those things, even just, again, social media playing a big part in that too. And you as a person being open to it, being open to learning more, to understanding more about yourself, about parenting in itself. That I think has contributed in a big way to how I would show up toward Alexander. I think one of the most humbling experiences for me as a mom has been to have conversations with this little human or person in saying, what I did the other day, or what I said, it wasn't very kind of me, and mommy just wants to say, mommy's sorry that she did that,
Wow, yes.
Because back in the day, I mean, let's be honest, children were generally seen as an extension of the household. You were really consulted, you were really asked if it was okay that X, Y, and Z was going to happen.
Yes.
You were just sort of moving with whatever was happening within the home space. But children now are very different, and I feel like parents need to honor that children too have opinions, that they too have feelings and emotions.
They have boundaries.
And they also have boundaries, and there are certain aspects to that you and I need to respect, adult or not, right? And so welcoming that now as a mom, it has me understanding that I do need to be inclusive in having these conversations with Alexander and saying, I actually really messed up here, my boy, and I'm sorry. And what's been so fulfilling about that is Alexander 110% of the time would within seconds respond with, it's okay, mommy, I love you, I forgive you, it's okay.
Oh, that's
right?
so sweet.
And I can only imagine, I suppose, what that would do to the psyche of a child, looking back one day and being like, my mom wasn't perfect.
Yes.
As we understand, our parents were not perfect, they are not perfect. But at least whenever there was a mess up of any sort or sorts, we could have an acknowledgement, accountability toward that, and taking ownership for that also teaches him the same, even as a child.
Yeah, I loved. I saw one of your posts. I think you were referencing that you had just finished your very last engagement, and that you were kind of doubting having your son at one of your engagements.
Oh, it was my book launch.
Your book launch, having him there.
Yes.
But nonetheless, he came, and the pictures you posted were so sweet. And I think sometimes we take for granted situations. We think, oh, but my child wouldn't understand.
Yes, they're too young, and they shouldn't be there.
They shouldn't be
no
here.
kids allowed.
Yes, they'll be a nuisance or something crazy like that. And I believe that a kid does understand it.
Yes.
Maybe not in the same way we do, but those moments are precious.
Yes, absolutely precious. It is a story in his book, that's in his book forever. And I hope that he some days remembers. And if not, there are pictures to
evidence.
Proof. But yes, I love that I thought to have him there, and that I actually saw that through. And even in motivating it or sharing it with my family, I said I just want my son to get to experience this with me, because he's part of me. He's an extension of who I am as Candice. He's part of me. And I'd want him to be part of the experience.
100%. So you've stated that you've also dedicated yourself to helping other people heal from deep-seated traumas. So maybe tell us exactly, what is a connection-focused therapist? What exactly is that, and what is your role?
Yeah, such a good question. I think whenever that is said within a space, the question that follows is usually, what exactly is it that this person does? So a connection-focused therapist is a person, I think, that again firmly believes in the power, the transformative power that genuine connection and relationships can bring in our lives. I use the example of and this is a real example that a person that I know had shared with me around a life skills center within the Delft community, and how they would usually assist in upskilling young adults, most that have dropped out of school, never attained their matric or finished school, and so they are high school dropouts, and they would join this academy or training center, and they would then teach them certain life skills, whether it's within the tech space or within the kitchen space. And they would eventually, after about, I think, a year and a half, graduate. And this person was describing to me just the difference in the person that initially walks through the door, that's coming to enroll in this course, and the person that leaves when they're walking down that stage wearing that gown. The person usually entering in, their head is generally very sort of lowered down. They don't really show a lot of confidence, or it's not that visible at least. But the person that walks across the stage about a year and a half later is a completely different person, and that is a transformative power that connection and relationship can do for you and I, changing the trajectory of our lives, but also just changing the way in which we view ourselves, the way in which we view the world and the people in it. And that's really what it's about, I think. It's seeing that there is this transformative power that true connection and genuine connection with others can bring for you and I.
And I think it's such a good breakdown, first of all. I think just in any space that you find yourself in, any Tom, Dick and Harry, any conversation that you're having, either with a girlfriend or maybe somebody that you're in a romantic relationship with, or even just your best friend or sister, I think we're all each other's therapists at the end of the day. And sometimes
unpaid.
Yes, unpaid. Working overtime. And also I think, like you just mentioned, having a connection with somebody and inhaling all of that information goes down so much better, because there's already an established connection here. The relationship's already been built. And I think a lot of us find ourselves in spaces where, even if we're in therapy, and you don't have that relationship with the person giving you this information and assistance, that also hinders you from actually growing properly. So very, very interesting.
Thank you. And I think that the misconception really around even just therapy itself is, I often describe it as an opportunity to have somebody hold space for you, because you see, the lived reality for many individuals is that they don't know safe people. They don't have safe people in their lives. They potentially never had. And they don't know what that safety feels like, and even what it shows up as within a relationship context. And I think what therapy presents in itself is just an opportunity for someone else to hold space for you, to show up as safe for you, perhaps in what has been for you the absence of safety in your own life. Yeah.
Wow, powerful. I know you referenced your book, so I want to deep dive into this baby, reparenting the inner child. What a title, first of all, and congratulations again on the launch of your book.
Thank you so much.
You have started a book, you've completed it. I think it's a very powerful and brave thing, very confident thing to do. What motivated you exactly to start writing?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that I do also is, taking up certain public talks or spaces, and I think I usually toward the end of a year I would deeply reflect on what that year looked like for me within my career and my profession. And I think about 2.5 years ago, I was in much the same space, and as I reflected back on the year, I saw a pattern of, me being in different spaces, whether I found myself speaking to foster parents, whether I was doing a trauma workshop with a group of young adults, whether I was doing a mental health talk within a corporate space or boardroom, and the CEO is sitting with a little notepad fervently making notes of what I was saying around safety and connection. I found that even with these different audiences and these different settings, the topic around our childhood lived experiences and adversities that many faced throughout childhood kept resonating across these audiences and settings. And I think as I reflected on that at the end of a year, I realized that there was a much deeper message there. And I guess I leaned into that, and I figured that the best approach I could take to this is to do what I love doing, and that is writing. I've been within the academic space for almost 10 years. And so I thought I was going to use what I believe was something to my advantage, and that was writing. And I suppose I started writing the book. Little did I know that I was now going to officially take myself on a journey of reparenting my inner child. I state at the start of the book that many might think or assume that, me being a therapist or being doing what I do, that I have probably completed my own journey, or that people think you know it all, you've got all the answers, I'm completely healed. But really, what the book has shown me is, because there's an awareness that I've brought to this particular topic, I am now, as a therapist, making a personal commitment to my own healing journey. So it's saying, I'm actually much the same like you.
Yes.
I also have my bag. I've also been carrying heavy for the longest time. And I'm also just here sitting on the ground very gently and with a lot of compassion on my own story, unpacking some of those stories and those narratives and those experiences. And sometimes people might wonder, I suppose, why do these stories matter? Why do I need to unpack the bag? And I want to say this is because we become the stories that we tell about ourselves, and a lot of those things that we've packed into the bag is often even what others have said about us. There's a reference made to the mother wound or the father wound, which is a deep-seated wound that many adults walk around with, of things that parents said to them.
Sure.
And they carry those narratives and those stories in that bag their entire lives, thinking that, because I've dissociated from it, or because I've just sort of locked it, stored it away in my memory box, that I'm actually okay.
But you're not.
Many a times that is not the case, yeah.
Okay. And where exactly do we find this book?
So the book is officially on Take-A-Lot. That's I think the most recent platform that you're able to access the book through.
Okay.
Also, there's a bookstore in Claremont called Protea Books, and I think this appeals especially to the students.
Okay.
To go ahead and pop by Protea Bookstore. It is a little less costly in that regard, but the book you can order directly from me. Visit my website, theconnectionfocustherapist.co.za, and there's a little WhatsApp link there that you could access the book through. Yeah.
Perfect. So in this book, I know you mentioned your bags, but you also mentioned this concept around chairs.
That's really gotten a lot of people.
Yes. So for me, it strikes me because it talks about the phases we go through, right? From that infancy to adulthood. And no matter where you find yourself in this scale, I believe anyone can see themselves in this book, right? So just speaking about the 3 chairs, talk to me about what that is and its significance.
Yes, so I mean, first and foremost, not my model, not my work. It is the model and work of a therapist known as Michelle Chalfant. And really what she does as a therapist is when somebody enters into her room or a space, she would have 3 chairs within that therapeutic space. I haven't actually physically done this before within my own space, but the 3 chairs resemble the different stages of our lifespan or development. The first chair, you can try to imagine or visualize a little kiddie stool. So it's that little wooden stool that a toddler would sit on.
Yes, I had one.
Some have backing, some don't, but it's usually a little round wooden stool. And that she refers to as the inner child or the child chair. And this chair represents everything that a child would represent. Freedom of expression, spontaneity, creativity, the basis and forming of understanding emotions and emotional regulation, at least if you have attuned or safe and responsive parents or caregivers, right? And then she moves into the adolescent chair. And this is a chair, I think, similar to what we are seated on today, perhaps a little different. This is more cushiony. But the adolescent chair represents the adolescent stage of development. It speaks to the quick thinking, fast-paced individual, never really thinking about the now, allowing themselves to be present in the now, very reactive.
Very reckless as well.
Quite reckless, not really thinking about a lot of the decisions that they're making, not mindful thereof at least. And then she speaks to the final chair, which is the adult chair. And this I refer to as, you know, that lazy boy chair, or that chair that you just see yourself like setting yourself back in at the end of a long day. And that she refers to as the chair that you and I must try our best to get to in our lives, because this chair represents the highest and the healthiest version of who we could ever be in our lives. But the reality for a lot of us is because of things that happened throughout our lives, and particularly within those formative years of our lives, we never get to experience the adult chair. In my adult chair, I am not reactive. I am present in the now. I allow myself to be present in the moment and really understanding and taking in. I'm mindful. I am considerate. I'm empathic. I understand that not everything needs my reaction.
Very true.
Right?
Sure, that's difficult.
And so when I'm seated in my adult chair, I'm potentially living and operating out of the healthiest place in my life. And that's really what the desire should be for each of us, is to live and operate out of that chair. So what happens within a therapeutic room is that someone would come in, she'd listen to the story, they'd share where they're at, whatever they are dealing with or facing in their lives, and then she'd say, okay, so I want you to seat yourself in the chair that you think you've been living and operating out of.
That takes a lot of self-awareness as well.
Yes, it does. A lot of self-awareness and a lot of mindfulness to your own journey and where you are at. And I guess that's where the reparenting work starts. Yes.
Wow. But besides just working in that space, I've mentioned you are an amazing speaker. That requires a lot of confidence as well. So I admire you in that regard.
Oh man, practice is all I can say. And I think there's a lot of work to be done still in respect of that, but I'm getting there. Yes.
But I know you're doing amazing work in the speaking space.
Thank you.
And last week you spoke at your final speaking engagement for 2024 with Great Girls Cape Town, if I'm right.
Yes, I did.
Am I correct in assuming that you're also very passionate about the empowerment of just girls and women in general? Talk to me about that.
Absolutely. I think from the space at the school where I counsel adolescent girls or teenage girls, into my classroom space at college where I'm working with young adults, some fresh out of school, some even older than I am, in their middle age. I definitely am extremely passionate about the empowerment of young girls and women. I think that a lot of us need to understand how to show up more kindly, firstly, because a lot of us don't have that, or many don't have that. And I think I want to best almost show what that looks like, or portray that to the best of my ability when it comes to these spaces that I take up, and whether it's a public talk or it's a teaching of some sort or it's an actual therapeutic session, is really just to show support, to be kind, to show up as supportive. One of the most profound experiences for me, even as a counselor at the school where I work, is often a lot of these young girls don't know what a maternal figure feels like or shows up as. And one of the interesting experiences I've had is often at the end of a session, there would be a question on, would ma'am be okay if I gave ma'am a hug?
Oh my goodness.
And you can only imagine, I mean, that in and of itself speaks to just the deep desire, that we have as women, as young girls, to know that there's another woman, and most importantly, most often a maternal figure or caregiver that can show up for me and show their support toward me and where I'm at in my life, because teenagers go through a lot of things. They are also really struggling in respect of their mental health and making sense of and understanding that, and even the stigmas that their parents place around or on mental health. And so, yes, I deeply, deeply believe in the empowerment and the supporting of women and young girls. Yeah.
And Candice, in that space, was there a particular moment where somebody shared how exactly you've impacted on their lives, or maybe vice versa?
I mean, I probably have many examples. I think one of the most recent, and I can potentially share this because the young person is now 18, so an adult. But there was an email that I received from one of the girls I'd been walking a therapeutic journey with for almost 2 years.
Sure.
And she had sent me this email, and she says to me, I've pretty much found what I want to do with my life and who I think I am, and I'm ready to lean into that, and I've started a YouTube channel.
Oh wow.
And I've attached the link for you to watch this video as I share about this decision that I've made in respect of my life.
Wow.
And I also just want to thank you for playing a big part in that.
Sure.
Yeah, so quite profound.
Wow.
Quite profound. That was quite a profound moment for me as a therapist, yes.
Wow. And I mean, to walk that long journey and see the final product, I'm assuming, of course, it's never going to be the final
ongoing,
product. It's ongoing because we're constantly working on ourselves. Wow, amazing. So with someone as full of a life as you have, and I know you're stretched quite thin, I'm sure you also fall into the trap, as each of us do, of overworking ourselves, being overstimulated, being overly tired, especially in the time that we are in right now with the year ending. And I think for me personally, I find it really difficult to switch off. Even when I'm doing nothing, I'm thinking about what I could be doing. So we've glamorized this note-taking rest thing. We've glamorized just constantly running like a well-oiled machine. But as we close off this year, how exactly are you choosing to kind of ground yourself, slow down, and then reset for 2025?
There's a lot of grounding that's needing to happen in this time. I can't lie. I think I shared with you off camera before we started that it's been quite difficult for my body and my mind to adjust to not being busy right now, because the entire year it's felt like I've just constantly been busy doing things, to the point where I'd be sitting in the morning having a cup of coffee, and then I'm thinking, wasn't there something you had to do, somewhere you had to be?
Yes, constantly running a to-do list.
And then that anxiety kicks in. I'm also anxious attachment. So I'm sitting and I'm anxious. I'm becoming anxious at the idea or thought of potentially missing something or not being where I'm supposed to be, And then I think after reflecting a little more, I'm like, no, you're actually exactly where you're supposed to be right now. And so take it in, allow yourself to be fully present. For us, or many of us rather, it's often that we struggle to build mindfulness because our minds are always full, and so I think I'm just sort of becoming more intentional about making time to not do anything. So being intentional on not being busy and finding time to connect with loved ones, I think in this period also is quite rejuvenating in itself for me and refreshing for me.
Okay, I want to close, Candice, with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Don't think about it for too long. I hope you haven't prepared anything, but I'll shoot to the first one. There are only 3. What daily habits keep you grounded and motivated?
I will answer that in saying quite a number of things, but I think part of my routine is that I guess I maintain a very prayerful life. I'm quite prayerful. I am a person that believes in practicing gratitude, and so really just bringing mindfulness and awareness to that, being mindful of and bringing awareness to that, where I believe that it breaks a lot of barriers in our lives, especially that worrying that we tend to do and the things that often make us so anxious, even in our subconscious, that constant worrying on what next, how you're going to navigate the next thing, how you're going to deal with the unknown and the unseen, and how that sort of creeps in and begins to almost take over for you and I. And so prayer, a lot of mindfulness practices, I think a lot of just understanding what is it really that I'm thankful for today, that I'm grateful for today, and being able to actually name those things. And I think that sort of breaks the barrier for me around the worrying and the anxiety that often creeps in and steps in my life. I do want to get more into, I suppose, exercising or sort of maintaining my physical health and well-being. I've not been great at that.
It's not too late.
No, I mean, with the turn of a new year coming, I'm about to get some new resolutions in there.
Perfect timing. If you ask me, it's literally perfect.
But I feel like I do need to honor my physical health and physical body a lot more. And I'm hoping to really lean into that in the new year. Maybe you can hold me accountable to that and check in with me next year.
Everyone listening to this.
Everyone now could basically hold me accountable.
Yes. Okay, cool. Question 2. Don't think about it too long. Who are some of your personal heroes or mentors that have played a very vital role in shaping you?
Yes, I think on a personal front, definitely my mom. I am Salome's daughter through and through. She's my go-to person for anything and everything. She is my the person that I could say to, Mom, this is what's happening right now. Can you please pray about this? Can you please, give me advice on this? And she actually, on the contrary, thinks I'm quite a closed book. So she's much more affectionate than I am. But I'm learning more about that now as I'm in my adulthood. But I'm leaning into that as well with my mom, where I'm cultivating the relationship that I desire with her as well. Sure. Yeah, but there's a lot that I learned from her. She's also quite a busy woman, a go-getter, a boss babe, if you want to call it that.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I see.
So my mom certainly, and I think within my career, my professional space, I definitely will give a shout out to Dr. Marcel Lant. She's played a pivotal role in my professional journey. I won't mention too much or say too much, but just that she's definitely shown up as a mentor within that space. Also a social worker by profession. Yeah.
Okay. Last but not least, we end every episode on this question. If you could give one piece of solid advice to your younger self, what would it be, firstly, and secondly, why?
Very good, and I can't think too long. I think that it would be to create as much, I suppose, internal capacity or emotional capacity to take in all the parts of myself. Do not think that life has to be this or that, because we often conditioned to think it has to be this or that, But to know that I can take in even those parts of me that are contradicting to myself, to the world, the parts that don't make sense, the parts that are messy, where I don't have a perfect story, and I'm okay with it. And so it doesn't really have to be this or that. It can be this and that, and it's okay.
That's absolutely beautiful. Candice, thank you once again
for
sitting down with me. It's been lovely getting to know you, all of the hats that you wear, and the special role you play, not only in this space, but every space that you enter. And I hope 2025 is exactly what you hope and dream it would be.
Thank you so much. I received that. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And just like that, we've reached the end of today's episode. We hope that you found inspiration and insight in today's story. And if you did, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That way, you'll never miss out on our next conversation. Stay inspired, stay connected, and we'll see you in our next episode.